Alright, today I'm going to be doing the operating system install on the Raspberry Pi. So as you can see there, I have it right next to my Apple TV. It's about half the size lengthwise, but it is a lot taller than Apple TV, but that's a pretty good size. And again, given that it's a full functioning computer, that's pretty good form factor size. Anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and set up my Raspberry Pi on the table. So this is the stuff you're gonna need. Okay. So you're gonna need the Raspberry Pi itself, a USB keyboard, and a USB mouse, and of course your HDMI cable. And one more thing, you're going to need the power adapter, the Wi-Fi adapter. So I'm going to use the two ports on the right for the USB keyboard and mouse. That's the keyboard going in there. Okay, got the keyboard and mouse hooked up. Now the HDMI cable. And again, you can connect the other end, one end to your monitor to support the HDMI, or to your TV. Okay, again, it's going to be over here on this side. And the other end is going to go to your TV. Now make sure that you set your TV to the correct input. In my case, it's HDMI 3 where I'm connecting this, so make sure you change the input. Last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to connect the power to the Raspberry Pi, and then I'm going to put it back on the TV screen so you see what's going on. Alright, what's this? See some kind of color bars. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Ooh, okay, so now it says resizing fat partition. Apparently I read the manual, that's normal. So here are the options. So again, the SD card I got with my kit came with this Noobs, stands for new, out of the box system, I believe, and it lets you choose from a few different options for an operating system. So let's look at those options, okay? So first option is Raspbian, which is the recommended operating system if you're a total newbie to the Raspberry Pi. And it's a Debian, Linux Debian distribution that's optimized for the Raspberry Pi. Next you have Arch Linux for ARM devices. Then you have OpenELEC. It's a fast and user-friendly XBMC media center distribution. So some of you who are interested in doing a media center setup might be interested in OpenELEC operating system. Then there's Fedora, which is a Fedora Linux distribution that's optimized for Raspberry Pi. Then there's RISC OS, which is a very fast and compact system. Then there's another XBMC Media Center option called Raspbian. And so yeah, you have two options if you want to set up a XBMC Media Center with your Raspberry Pi. Next is, I guess, Raspbian boot to Scratch, a version of Raspbian that boots straight into Scratch. No idea what that means. And data partition adds an empty 512 megabyte EX extended 4 format partition to the partition layout. Extended 4 is a Linux-based file system. So if you use Linux, you're familiar with that file system. It's equivalent to FAT32, NTFS, and so on. I'm going to go ahead and select the recommended Raspbian operating system. And apparently you have to, and again, this is going to load this operating system on this SD card. So on the SD card now, you're going to have your recovery partition, which if for some reason you screw up your system, you can boot up to recovery and reinstall the operating system. Then you're going to have Raspbian, and then maybe some other partitions for data or boot and so on. So apparently you have to click this little checkbox on the left. Okay, and now you see all these other. Okay, so now that I selected my operating system, I'm going to go ahead and click install. So it says warning, this will install the selected operating system. All existing data on the SD card will be overwritten, including any OSs that are already installed. But the exception is the recovery partition, it won't touch that. So I think that includes this noob software that lets you install any operating system, well, that's compatible with Raspberry Pi. Alright, so now here we see the screen. It's installed in the Raspbian operating system. Let me fix this a bit. So there you see the Raspberry Pi symbol plus Debian Linux equals to Raspbian. That's the name of this particular operating system. Tells you here that the default username for Raspbian is Pi, the default password of Raspberry. And remember, Raspberry is with a P after the S. I don't spell raspberry much, so it's good to remember that. So again, default username when you're logging in is Pi, and password is Raspbian. First time you boot up, you'll see a configuration program called Raspi config. You can choose to always boot into graphical user interface or into the command line. So it's up to you if you're a command line only person, or if you want a nice GUI with a web browser and all that. I'm probably going to go with the GUI, graphical user interface. So here we see that it's writing about almost 2 gigabytes of data. I guess that's the size of this operating system. It also says here that there are a lot of already pre-installed programs on Raspbian you can use. You can also use a program called Scratch if you want to do programming. There's also a Pi store online where you can download additional programs or even sell your own content. So if you want to develop your own content for Raspberry Pi and sell it, you have that option. So again, they emphasize programming because they're targeting schools, like education institutions, for these Raspberry Pis. It's a low-cost computer that students can play around with and program for their needs. So a good application for this is if you're a computer science student or electrical engineering, or combination of both, because then you're dealing with programming, and also you can connect hardware to your Raspberry Pi and control that hardware with your Raspberry Pi, so that's pretty cool. And again, you can connect the camera to the Raspberry Pi as well as an LCD screen. Okay, so I'm just going to take a little break and wait for this to finish installing. Okay, it looks like it's finishing up 100%, and I want to say about 25 minutes have passed, so you know, once you get started, you'll probably want to go grab some coffee or something, and then come back about 25 minutes later and it should be done. Okay, so now we see a message stating that the operating system was successfully installed, and it's going to wait for you to click OK. Again, there you could see what I was talking about earlier, where it says for recovery mode, hold down Shift. So again, if you need to go into recovery mode, when you're booting up your Raspberry Pi, hold on the Shift key, and that will bring up recovery mode, just in case you need it. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK now. And my Raspberry Pi is rebooting. So if you're a Linux user, you're familiar with this. You'd see it's starting up the operating system, starting up services, and then it's making sure everything's turned on. Let me dim the lights a bit. Okay. So it's hard to see here. There we go. So it's just checking the system, starting up the services one by one. And if everything's okay, it goes ahead and continues. So it's generating some SSH host keys. That's a one-time thing only. So the first time you start this up, it might take a little bit longer than usual. I'm going to point towards the bottom here because that's where most of the stuff is happening. Let me zoom out just to see the whole thing. It's basically all text-based right now as it's booting up. Oh, okay. We have a nice little dialog window. Okay, so for the first option, expand file system, apparently looking at the documentation, you don't need to do this if you installed Raspbian using noobs, which is what we did. You can ignore this section as the file system was expanded automatically during installation, so I think that first part when we saw it partitioning the SD card, I think that's when it automatically expanded the file system. So again, we don't need to do this. I am going to go ahead and change the user password for the default user Pi. Okay, you just press OK. And you see way down here in the corner, it actually asked for the new Unix password. So I'm going to go ahead and enter it. You'll have to enter it twice, and just make a note that it won't show up. Letters won't show up as you type, so you don't have to worry about if someone's looking over your shoulder or something, or for example in this video. So enter it twice and then press enter, and successfully changed. Okay, so now we're gonna select how we want to boot our system. Okay, and so we're gonna go with option 3, and we can select text only, desktop login with the graphical desktop, or scratch start at it starts a scratch programming environment upon boot. Gonna go with graphical desktop. Click OK. Okay, so now I'm gonna go under internationalization options. The only thing I'm gonna change really is the time zone. I want to make sure I'm using the proper time zone. It does take a little while, and then you'll get this. So I'm gonna say I live in the US, and then I'm gonna select what time zone I'm in. So I'm gonna see if Los Angeles is there. No. Well, there's Hawaii, Central, Pacific Ocean, Pacific New. I'm gonna go with Pacific Ocean. Okay. Again, I'm not gonna enable the camera. I'm not gonna add to Rastrack. I'm not gonna overclock. I already did about. I'm gonna check out advanced options. Okay, I guess there's some options here. I might change the host name, so let's do that. This one, I don't see any black parts, so I don't need to configure that one. Okay, so there's some limitations on what you can have for a host name. Okay, so letters A through Z, numbers 0 through 9. It's case insensitive, and you can't begin with a hyphen. You can't begin or end with a hyphen. No other symbols, punctuation, or blank spaces are permitted. Alright, click OK. So I'm gonna say Fern Pie, and then I'm gonna hit the tab key to click to OK. Alright, let's go back to advanced options. Change the amount of memory available to the GPU. I don't want to change that. Enable, disable remote command line access to your Pi using SSH. I do want to go ahead and enable that because I might want to connect to this remotely later once it's on my Wi-Fi. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and select yes, I want to enable the SSH server, which I can use to connect remotely through command line to my Raspberry Pi. Okay, it's enabled. Back to advanced options. Enable, disable automatic loading of SPI kernel module needed for Pi face. I don't know what that is, so I'm not enabling it. Force audio out through HDMI or 3.5mm jack. I'm not going to do that either. You can also update this tool to the latest version. I'm not going to do that. Just going to hit escape to go back. And now I'm done. So I'm going to hit tab to go down, and then tab one more time to click on finish. Notice that for this portion you cannot use the mouse. Okay, you have to do everything through keyboard. So again, remember tab and shift tab are your friends. Shift tab is to go back one, to go backwards. Tab is to go forwards through the different options. So I'm going to click finish, and ask me, do you want to reboot now? I'm going to say yes. So I'm going to zoom out first so you can see the whole screen. Okay, it's doing a bunch of stuff, shutting down services, and it should restart. Okay, this is normal. Okay, again, you can hold down shift to go to recovery, but we don't want to. And there's a bunch of stuff on the left. Again, it's this service is starting up. It should boot up much faster this time because it's not creating SSH keys and all that stuff. So you can see the nice little Raspberry Pi Linux symbol on the top left. Again, this is where you would see if there's a problem starting some service, or there's a problem with your file system. Maybe you shut down the Raspberry Pi by unplugging the power cord, and that might have messed up your file system. It would show up on this step. Ooh, nice big Raspberry Pi. Ooh, the desktop came up pretty quick, and there you have it. So you got an operating system loaded in your Raspberry Pi. Let's see, Wi-Fi config. Both RAM, they make a software called Mathematica, which is here, and apparently they give you some type of free version of it. IDO is for Python programming, if you're familiar with Python. Debian reference, I guess if you want to look up commands for Debian Linux, command line. OCR resources, I guess for optical character recognition. Midori, I don't know what that is. I believe it's their web browser. PyStore. Terminal, if you want to bring up the console. Scratch is what you use for programming, if you want to write programs for Raspberry Pi. And then there's Python games. So let's go ahead and configure the Wi-Fi. Okay, so I see here a bunch of networks. So I see here a bunch of Wi-Fi networks. It looks like the driver for the ConnaKit USB Wi-Fi adapter worked out of the box on Raspbian. So I'm going to connect to my home network, and I'm going to just go ahead and double click, and then under PSK, that's your pre-shared key, that's your password for your Wi-Fi. I'm going to go ahead and enter it, and then I'm going to go ahead and click add. Okay, and then I'm going to close this, and then I'm going to click connect. Again, to bring up a terminal, you click on Alex Terminal, double click. Alright, let me put them right next to each other. We don't need it that wide either. That's good. Okay. Zoom in a bit. Okay, so I want to issue a command like ifconfig. I see here that my Ethernet 0 is not connected, so I'm not going to get an IP address for it. This is a local loopback. This is the one I'm interested in here. And I see here that I did pick up an internal IP address on my home network, so that's good. So now I want to do something like ping www.yahoo.com, and I do get ping replies, which is a really good sign. Great, so now I've established internet connectivity on my Raspberry Pi. I'm going to go ahead and zoom out. I'm going to Control C to kill this here. Close the terminal. Close the Wi-Fi config. And again, you can it's still running here, so you can bring it up by left clicking this Wi-Fi symbol down here on the bottom right. So one thing I want to actually try is, let's see if I could open up a web browser and browse the internet. So I believe it's called Midori, screen icon. I believe that's the web browser for Raspberry Pi. We'll see in just 1 second. Looks like a web browser to me. Alright. I'm gonna go see what's new at Engadget.com. Now, I don't know if this supports Flash, so we'll see. Stop the robots. Okay, I'm going to try to scroll. I think it's still loading. So the wheel mouse button works, but looks like it's a little lagged.